Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of West Berkshire Council's Eastern Area Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Alan McCrow and I'm Chairman of the committee. The other members of the committee present this evening are Jeremy Cotton, Paul Cander, Justin Pemberton, Vicky Poole, Richard Somner and Clive Taylor. The following officers are in attendance to advise and support the meeting. Simon Till, who's the Team Manager, Development Management. Gareth Dowding, Principal Engineer, Traffic and Road Safety. Lewis Richards, Planning Officer. Dawn Bond, Legal Services Manager and Data Protection Officer. Sam Chiverton, Clerk, and Thomas Radbourne, who's our Zoom host. Before we start proceedings, I'd like to explain that tonight's meeting is being held both over Zoom and with councillors present in the council chamber. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. Please can I ask everybody present in the chamber to make sure you switch on your microphones when invited to speak directly into them, and to switch them off when you've finished. Could I also ask you, make sure you put your mobile phones to silent and turn the sound off on your laptops. If we hear the evacuation alarm this evening, you must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency route and please follow any instructions given by the officers. The assembly point is the car park of the Dolphin Pub. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such time as it's safe to proceed. When voting, only members present in the chamber can vote, and voting will be by a show of hands. Do members have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted this evening? No. Thank you. First of all, item 1, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, we received apologies from Councillor Ross McKinnon and Councillor Jack Mays.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. Do any members have any amendments they wish to have made to the minutes, please? In that case, could I have a proposal that they be adopted? Thank you. That's seconded. Thank you. Those in favour of them being adopted as a true record? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry, I should have asked if anybody was opposed, but I think everybody raised their hands.
Yeah.
Item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members wish to make a declaration of interest, please? I would like to make a declaration, actually. I've received a couple of communications from the applicant on this. I've also had communications from the parish council, and I've also queried one of the aspects of the application with officers, namely the car parking provision. Thank you. If you just bear with me while I sign the minutes. At this point, I'd like to hand over chairmanship of the meeting to the Vice Chairman, Councillor Richard Somner, as I wish to speak on the planning application. Okay, thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, first item on the main item on the agenda then. I would love your crib sheet, if I may. It will certainly make life a wee bit easier. So item 4 on the agenda tonight, then the main item for this evening, item number 25/00062/FUL in Thiel. Could I ask then please our officer Lewis Richards to begin presentation of the application? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The application seeks planning permission for the proposed change of use from offices to a mixed-use ground floor hot food takeaway and upper floor residential. The item is before the committee due to there being over 10 letters of objection, as well as being called in due to concerns regarding road safety and the concentration of takeaways already on the high street. The officer's recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in section 8.1 of the agenda report. Apologies. The main issues considered during the assessment of this application relate to the principle of the development, in particular an additional hot food takeaway in the proposed location, the impact of the proposal on the character and appearance of the area, amenity considerations, both in terms of neighbours as well as proposed occupiers of the upper floor units, and highway safety with particular regard given to parking. The site lies within the Thiel Conservation Area as well as the town centre commercial area. Importantly, it lies outside of the primary shopping frontage. Policy Shop 1 of the SAVE policies directs that changes of use within primary shopping frontages will be refused where they would result in the concentration of non-retail uses. It is acknowledged in a number of objections that there are already a number of takeaways on the high street. However, the site is outside of the primary shopping frontage, so a reason for refusal would not be justified in this regard. It is for this reason that the takeaway use is considered acceptable. Despite this, officers acknowledge that an argument can reasonably be made that an additional takeaway in this location would be of minor detriment to the vitality of the high street, contrary to policy CS11. However, officers have applied a greater degree of weight to the benefits of the proposed conversion of a redundant office building to what is defined by the NPPF as a main town centre use. The site plan indicates a total of 10 parking spaces are proposed, with 6 allocated to the residential use and 4 for the commercial. Cycle and bin storage is also proposed. The Highway Authority have reviewed this arrangement and it is considered acceptable. In terms of the ground floor commercial use, the Environmental Health Officer has no objections relating to noise or odour. No communal amenity space is proposed, which is contrary to the Quality Design SPD. However, as per HSG 13 of the SAVE policies, these requirements can be waived if the residential units are on upper floors in town centres, which is the case here. These are some images taken on site from the high street to the front, as well as from the courtyard to the rear. Although the current use of the site is offices, the building could be described as residential in character. In order to facilitate the ground floor unit, the front facade is proposed to be altered to create a shop front. The site is located within the conservation area and it is also adjacent to One High Street, which is a Grade 2 listed building. As a result, the Conservation Officer reviewed the plans and is satisfied that no harm would arise in respect of the significance of the conservation area or to the setting of the listed building. The council must demonstrate a supply of a minimum 5 years housing calculated against the requirement of the adopted strategic policies where they are up to date, or against the local housing need based on the standard method where they are over 5 years old. The current core strategy was adopted in 2012, and therefore the housing requirement must be based upon the standard method of the NPPF. Therefore, at the present time, the council are unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing. Where this is the case, the NPPF directs that permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. In this instance, it is considered that this is not the case, and the application is recommended for approval partly on this basis. To summarise, the principle of a ground floor takeaway is acceptable on balance, particularly as it has been demonstrated that there is little demand for office space in this location. In addition, the design is considered acceptable in a location that varies in architectural character. There is no requirement to provide communal space in this town centre area, and neighbouring amenity is protected through conditions relating to noise and odour, and the proposed parking arrangement is considered acceptable in relation to both the residential and commercial elements. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Mr. Dowding, anything to add at this point?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. We will move on then to our list of speakers this evening. We have from the parish, Rob Gallop and Di Hughes, who will be joining us on Zoom. Hopefully they will be coming over shortly, followed by Steve Brown as the agent, and then Councillor Macaro as the ward member. Do we have our participants on Zoom?
They are here, Chairman. They're just rejoining as a panelist.
Very much.
Can you hear me?
We have you now. Thank you very much for joining us. You have 5 minutes to speak between you. Dawn, if I can ask you to set and call the timing out, would you like a 60-second warning before the end?
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, ready to start whenever you are. Thank you.
I think as a council, the main objection was the road safety being next to a pedestrian crossing and with double yellow lines and no parking. The village already experiences issues opposite at the co-op with delivery drivers pulling up and running in and running out and not using the car park around the back. So that was the main objection from the councillors or from Theale Parish Council when they first met. Subsequently, since the site visit, the other things that we've submitted in writing in advance of the meeting have sort of escalated, if you like, or, been investigated further, but minuted by Theale Parish Council significantly was the road safety to local residents, and Councillor Gallop might then be able to expand on other matters we submitted in writing.
Thank you, Di. I can read out this submission very quickly if the councillors have not received that. Would that be adequate, Chairman?
If you to go through within your 5 minutes, yep, no problem at all.
Okay, so Theale Parish Council would like to object to this based on the following points. So, as Di has said, inadequate parking provision and highway safety. The proposal fails to provide adequate on-site parking, either for staff and for patrons, in an area where parking demand already exceeds supply. This raises serious concerns regarding road safety and congestion. We have submitted photographic evidence of this. The development is therefore contrary to policy CS13 transport of the core strategy, which requires that new developments must be accessible by sustainable methods of transport and must not compromise highway safety. Point 2 is the location is outside the designated commercial area. The local plan identifies a defined commercial area on Theale High Street, which ends at number 7. So as such, 1A lies outside this designated business zone. It is situated in an area where residential and mixed uses predominate, and its development into a new commercial takeaway use would be inconsistent with the local plan's spatial strategy. Approving a business use outside the recognised commercial boundary risks setting a precedent for commercial creep and further erosion of residential amenity. This directly conflicts with the inherent policy of CS11, which seeks to focus commercial development within identified centres only. Point 3 is the harm to the local character and streetscape. The proposed changes to the frontage and the use of the building represent overdevelopment that would be out of character with the existing street scene and architectural form. The scale and design fail to preserve or enhance the area's character, contrary to policy CS14 design principles, which require development to demonstrate high quality and sustainable design that respects the character and appearance of the area. Point 4, over-concentration of similar uses. Theale High Street already contains a high number of takeaway outlets. The introduction of another would contribute to an over-concentration of single-use type, undermining the vibrancy, diversity and sustainability of the local centre. This is contrary to policy CS11, hierarchies of centres, of the core strategy, which seeks to maintain the vitality and viability of town and village centres by supporting a balanced mix of uses. And the final point is a restrictive covenant. It's understood that the site is subjected to a restrictive covenant prohibiting the sale of certain types of takeaway food. This is a significant legal constraint that would inhibit the lawful operation of the proposed business, potentially rendering the use unenforceable or subject to legal dispute. Approving the proposal in conflict with a known covenant may create longer-term compliance and enforcement issues. So basically, to conclude, for the reasons set out, including inadequate parking, over-concentration of takeaway uses, harm to the area's visual and historic character, conflict with a restricted covenant, and the location of the site outside the designated commercial area, Theale Parish Council respectfully requests that the application be reviewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and within your time, so excellent work. Members, do you have any questions for members of the Parish Council? Councillor Taylor?
Yes, in respect of the road safety issue, is there any history of accidents or incidents on this part of the road at all?
Sorry.
Di, I'll let you take over on this one.
We have regular near misses that are reported. I think thankfully to date, we're not aware of any major incidences. It's more near misses where people are then causing trips and hazards. It's mainly due to visibility. And ironically, the picture that Lewis showed as part of his presentation, you'll see that there was a big roadwork sign that was erected by the contractor, and they actually restricted the zebra crossing right outside the property development. And if you go back to that PowerPoint and that photo, we were receiving massive complaints then about visibility. So what happens by the co-op, which is on the opposite side of the road, cars pull up because they're running in to pick up the Deliveroo sort of shop type things. So they are planning to only be 60 seconds. But inevitably they're not ready. And while they're there, other traffic can't see people using the pedestrian crossing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Any other questions, members? No? Okay, thank you both for your time. Please do continue to listen in. I think if we move you out to the other room again, you should be able to still listen to everything that's been said.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. We will move on then. We have no objectors listed and no supporters listed. We will move on to the agent, Mr. Brown. If you'd like to come to the lectern, if you press the button on the right, you will be able to activate the microphone. Same for you, sir, 5 minutes. Would you like a warning before you get to that?
I'm optimistic I won't need the 5 minutes, but if there's questions, hopefully that will be okay.
Questions will be outside it, so that's not a problem at all.
Super.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, Chair and members and Parish Council listening online. So as you've heard, this planning application proposes the change of use of the ground floor of Crown House from offices to hot food takeaway, and a change on the upper floors to create 4 residential apartments. The building we're talking about has been empty for about 18 months. It makes no contribution whatsoever to the vitality and viability of the high street. So this application proposes to bring the building back into active use. Sensitive external alterations are proposed. A means of access, parking and landscape are also proposed as part of the scheme. Submission of this application was informed by a positive pre-application process and engagement with your officers, with their advice informing the final scheme design. This is the exactly type of development encouraged by the NPPF, a high quality one at that. It does accord with the development plan, development management policies of the core strategy, the SAVE policies of the local plan, and indeed the policies contained in your emerging and fingers crossed soon to be adopted new local plan. So this high quality scheme secures 4 much needed new dwellings in a highly sustainable location, an appropriate use at ground floor level that will enhance the vitality of the high street, employment opportunities, policy compliant levels of residential and visitor parking,
and an active frontage that does respect the conservation area. Concerns have been raised by the parish council about highway safety and parking, whether there's a need for more residential accommodation in the high street, an impact on the amenity of existing residents, and design and aesthetics. All of these points, all of them, have been comprehensively addressed in your thorough officer's report. That's not only the planning officer, that's highways, environmental health, and conservation officers. All elements of the scheme have been deemed to be acceptable and appropriate, which is of no surprise given the process undertaken in terms of the pre-application consultation. It is sensitively designed in relation to the character of the conservation area. Now, yes, road safety, parking, deliveries are flagged as a key concern for the parish council. That is a material consideration, of course it is, which you have to consider and weigh in the balance. But when one does carry out that planning balance, it's self-evident the balance is in favour of granting permission for all the reasons set out. There is no safety issue. There's no objection from the highways officer. The scheme provides enough parking, and moreover, the applicant owns the business in Thiel Court with all the parking spaces there and has no problem in the event that 4 parking spaces on site are in use. They can use the many number of spaces on the site, but the 4 of itself meets the standards. So we've seen your update sheet. I've listened to what the parish council said about the restrictive covenant. That was removed back in 1989, before the building was built in the first place. There's no legal issue in terms of the restrictive covenant at all. So this scheme is indeed sensitively designed. It's high quality. It accords with the relevant and applicable policy considerations, including CS11 and SP22. There are no statutory consultee objections to the scheme whatsoever. On the contrary, it's supportive. And when one is grappling with this planning balance and weighing up the concerns expressed, valid ones by the parish council, you've got to weigh those in the balance, as I've said. But as a decision-making body, you've got to give the views of the statutory consultees considerable weight. And no matter how well intended, to divert or depart from those views, you need cogent and compelling reasons. There aren't any for the reasons explained in your officer's report. So we hope you're in a position, after contemplating matters, to be in a position to support this application, carefully considered with your officers, to bring vitality and viability to the high street, making sensible and sensitive use of a vacant building. So hopefully I'm okay time-wise, so thank you very much.
Mr. Brown, thank you. Members, any questions for the agent? Councillor McRae.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, actually. The first one, you mentioned employment. How many people would be employed here at any one time, please?
I think it all depends on ultimately the end user, but you're probably looking at possibly 3 or 4 full-time equivalent jobs, and then obviously jobs during the construction phase. So something probably of that order.
Thank you. And the other thing, you mentioned deliveries. I couldn't see anything on the plan for any kind of dedicated area for deliveries. How do you anticipate that that's not going to cause kind of blocking of parking spaces or whatever?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think in terms of this scheme, to use the word unique is probably not right, but of the many businesses on the high street, they all have parking deliveries on the high street. Very few have their own dedicated approach to the rear with parking. So this scheme certainly achieves that with parking, and there's space for deliveries as well at the side. So you've got where the 4 existing commercial spaces are, the delivery vehicles can reverse in there to unload and out. And of course, it's not going to be the large delivery vehicles like you'd expect for the co-op or those retail outlets. This is a smallish hot food takeaway, so the deliveries will be commensurate with its operation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor Taylor?
Yes, you mentioned that that this building has been empty for 18 months, and I think was previously used as offices. I mean, to what extent during that 18 months have efforts been made to find new office occupants for the premises?
Yes, so obviously attempts were made in terms of marketing that building to find an office use as a going concern for it. And you'll see in the officer's report, there's reference to the material that submitted the application, which looked at and appraised the need or otherwise for office space in that building and in the locality, with a significant oversupply of empty office space that's just simply not being taken up. And so there's no market for that as a going concern. And of course, the residential component would be permitted development in any event pursuant to the PD rights. So it has been marketed and there's no interest for the office building as a going concern.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members? No? Okay, Mr. Brown, thank you very much indeed. We will move on then to our ward member, Councillor McCrow. We won't make you go up to the lectern, I don't think. You're quite happy where you are. Over to you. You know the rules, 5 minutes.
Thank you. I took the question out of my mouth. Thank you. If I could have a warning, please, 1 minute ago. As we've heard from the parish council, there's quite a concern about parking. The high street does get very parked up, and it's quite difficult to find spaces there, not only during the day but also in the evening. And the applicant has put forward 4 designated parking spaces, but if we've got 3 to 4 employees, then at least half of those are likely to be occupied by employees at any one time. And also those spaces are kind of tucked away around the back, and I suspect many customers won't know they're there and that there is that very narrow alleyway to access the front of the takeaway if it comes to pass. And the big concern is that the customers, and particularly kind of Deliveroo type Uber Eats and these kind of people, might be tempted to park on the zigzags of the zebra crossing and then obstruct views of people crossing the road, which is, you know, a big road safety concern. We've heard about concerns about the number of takeaways. I count there's 8 kind of either pure takeaways or food shops that do takeaways, and they make up 40% of the shop fronts in Thiel High Street. So another one is kind of piling on the pressure. Bit surprised about this issue about office space, about there being an oversupply. The local plan review inspector has said there's going to be a shortfall of 58,000 square metres in West Berkshire in the new local plan. And we're also going to lose a big office block in Thiel, which has permission to convert to 72 flats. So I'm very surprised at that, and surprised they can't find a use for this comparatively modern office block, which was originally used by Berkshire County Council Social Services. But there we are. So all in all, I don't think this is really a suitable application for Thiel High Street. But on the other hand, I will listen to the argument going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McRae. Well within the time, looking at the way Dawn's not in there. Members, any questions for Councillor McRae? You've been very lenient this evening. I'm starting to worry now what the debate's going to be like. Okay, thank you. Let's move on then to ask if you have any officers' questions for clarification. Councillor Cotton.
Thank you, Chairman. Basically, there's been mention of that this is outside the area for the general shopping area of the High Street. But I noticed that opposite the actual building is the co-op, the post office, and just one. So, I mean, what is the area defined to be the area of conservation or the recognised shopping area, please?
Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'll answer that question. Just bear with me, members. I intend to share my screen. Oops. it will play ball anyway. Right. Hang on. Right. Thank you, Chairman. Members, defined in red is the Thiel commercial area. So this is within the current local plan, and it's a similar layout in the forthcoming local plan review. This is the area that policy CS, or I can't remember, 11, I believe, says should be the focus for all commercial development. Now, the application site is adjacent to Thiel Court. You'll see the Crown Inn is outside of the commercial area, and the Crown Inn is somewhat to the west of number 1A. You can see 1A, maybe not in the detail of this map, but that's actually 2 units in to the commercial area. What this isn't showing you at present, and I will endeavour to do this, is to show you the primary shopping frontage. Right, that's updated with the primary shopping frontage. So the primary shopping frontage comes on the north side of the Thiel Town Centre commercial area, comes to number 7, so slightly to the east of Unit 1A.
Sorry, Chairman, I can't actually see that.
That's the.
That's on the internet. You can see it very clearly on that.
It's,
Yeah.
it's, that's correct, Councillor Kander.
So it's
Thank you.
the dotted line along it. Sorry, I'm just, that's the first. I haven't seen things defined by dotted lines. Okay, so.
Okay, so now this is to correct a slight misunderstanding in respect of the parish council's response. The planning policy directs commercial uses, which would include takeaway use, into the commercial town centre area. It also protects the primary shopping frontage for retail purposes. So in this case, we have a site that is inside the commercial area, but outside of the primary shopping frontage. So there is no conflict with policy in terms of this unit being allocated as a takeaway, because it doesn't form part of the primary shopping frontage and therefore doesn't have to be preserved for retail.
Sorry, may I interrupt? So the issue of the primary shopping frontage is like almost like a preservation or a recognised area, and it's just actually that's just protecting the areas that you've defined by the dotted line.
That's right.
So it's not exclusive. It could be. It's not excluding others along the commercial area. It's just protecting the area that's defined.
It's protecting it for retail, and hot food takeaway isn't considered to be retail. It's a distinct use of its own. So if the proposal was within the primary shopping frontage, then it would be contrary to policy in terms of preserving that area for retail. But it's outside of it. It is, however, a commercial use, and therefore it's in accordance with policy which directs commercial uses to designated town centres.
Gotcha. It's torturous, but I got there in the end. Thank you. Also, just one question. Would we, probably not, but would we be able to, in conditions, say that deliveries must be delivered to the rear of the premises, please, Chairman?
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually toying with the potential for a condition of that form. I don't have any principal concerns with the reasonableness and enforceability of a condition requiring that a plan for how deliveries will be arranged is provided with details in terms of delivery drivers receiving deliveries from the rear entrance of the proposed hot fit takeaway.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. That answers my questions.
Thank you both. Councillor Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I actually have two now. Forgive me. Simon, Mr. Till, beg your pardon. Seeing as you beautifully have your image still up on the screen, for my understanding, when was the last time that the categories, the red line and the blue dotted lines, were last updated? Has there been any changes to the categories in the last, say, 2 iterations of the local plan?
Thank you, Chairman. So I can't tell you pre-2012. I understand that it would have been a similar form prior to 2012 in terms of the red line for the commercial centre and the blue line for the primary shopping frontage. We've reviewed those for the emerging plan, and going forward, they are slightly changed, but they're not changed in respect of where this unit sits within relation to those 2 boundaries. So it will still be within the commercial area. It will still be outside of the primary shopping frontage.
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Till. A question for highways, if I may, Chair. Highways, hi, Gareth. There's been several references today about road safety. I wonder if you could elaborate on any measures or your perspective on road safety in general on that particular area, please.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Well, I have checked the accident record in there because obviously accidents were mentioned. There's nothing reported in the last 2 years, and there's one in the last 3 years immediately outside that area. In terms of road safety there, normal road safety rules exist for all users of the highway at that location. If someone decides to park on the double yellows or the zigzags of the crossing, well then, unfortunately, they would have to pay the consequences if they are stopped by a police officer in doing so. The proposal offers parking at the rear of the property, and there are many parking areas elsewhere in Thiel where you could stop to then walk down and pick up a takeaway. So we don't have any concerns over the usage of that site for this proposal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no problem. Chairman's indulgence. I'm going to ask you one myself, if I may, Mr. Dowding. With inconsiderate parking often comes a concern with regards to speed. Can you just confirm, I understand that the High Street is a 20-mile-an-hour zone or area or road. Can you just confirm that that is to the extent of the area that we're talking, please?
Thank you. Yes, in fact, Thiel itself has recently undergone a large 20-mile-an-hour speed limit initiative where not just the High Street, but many of the streets leading into the High Street and around the High Street are now 20-mile-an-hours. The High Street was traditionally the first 20-mile-an-hour element of Thiel. As part of the rollout of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout the whole of Thiel, we undertook speed surveys in Thiel, and the High Street has got very good compliance of 20-mile-an-hour or under.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying that. Any further questions to officers, members? No? Okay. Let's move on then to debate. Councillor Cottam, I can't set you off this week, so I will hand it over to the floor.
Thank you. I willingly present myself. Yeah, it's a difficult one. It is in the balance, but I mean, to say it's another takeaway is, well, that's a commercial issue, and it's not for us as a planning committee to define that. I mean, in the past in Thatcham, we had like a dozen estate agents. Now we have a dozen hairdressers. It's totally without our control, unfortunately, because you do feel that, yeah, it can be overbearing, but it's the spirit of the market and competition, and we don't get involved in that. I am concerned very much about the deliveries to the organisation or whatever it becomes. I think the parish council has a very strong point there. I know we all know it's illegal to go on zigzag lines and double lines, and if we had a lot more policemen patrolling the streets, we might have some confidence that that will be caught. So if we could make a step to help with safety, even though it's up and above the law, and if we could guide officers and ask them to help us to put a condition in there about deliveries, certainly the shop will have control of that, because they can then instruct suppliers to do so. You can't put that on the public, but safety is my prime concern on here. And I would feel a struggle to support it if we couldn't make some impression on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cotton. Councillor Poole.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cotton, for your comments. As a ward member with whom has a delivery issue within their ward where a delivery truck parks and obscures traffic, I completely understand the sentiment from Councillor Cotton. I will be very supportive of a condition that specifies deliveries at the rear, but also deliveries of any goods needed for cooking and preparation of the food. I would also be very supportive of any time restrictions so that any deliveries occur outside of busy periods, so that it doesn't upset the flow of the traffic, providing greater visibility for any persons walking through the village. Moving on to the application itself, I find myself largely in favour on balance, because it is in the balance of this application. I do hear Councillor McCrow when he shared the comment about if you've got 3 or 4 parking spaces at the rear, those are going to be taken up by people who are working there. Given the number of properties within Theale, I would like to imagine that there will be some people who would walk to work. I know that it's the case for most of the takeaways within my ward that people walk there to work, and therefore that would create more parking spaces for people who would then be collecting their own foods. I know that this is largely conjecture, Chair, but I'm just trying to place the argument. Regarding the properties, I think it'd be quite nice to see some clever properties within walking distance of Theale train station. I'm much more in favour of these than the larger developments that's happening towards the roundabout, more towards the Pangbourne side of Theale, dare I say it. I do find myself leaning largely in favour, Chair. I don't think I have any further to add regarding that restriction on the deliveries.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kander.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'm largely in favour of this, I guess, from a business and commercial perspective, and generating local business. I think it makes sense. I think generating some local housing as well. So it sounds like some quality housing, which again would hopefully bring more gentrification, affluence, etc., and also be able to walk to the station, as Councillor Poole has suggested. There does seem to be plenty of appropriate car parking out the rear, both for the residences and also for deliveries. There are some restrictions already in terms of timing for deliveries. I think it'd be a challenge to make it even more restrictive to say, but you can't go between 3 and 4, let's say, for school kick-out time. So I think that might be a challenge, but again, I defer to our officers for advice on that. I think Officer Till was already talking about potentially looking at something to make sure that a plan for deliveries, which would include not enforcement, because that's quite difficult, I guess, but certainly guidance to make sure that major deliveries are done round the back. I think in terms of parking and people illegally parking. I used to go to King Walk when I lived where I live now in Purley-on-Thames. And it comes down to people, right? I would never double park. I would never, what have you. I would drive down the other end of the road where the last pub that is almost closed, right down the end there, and find a space and then walk back, because that's what decent people do. But unfortunately, you'll always get people who are not that decent. And it doesn't matter what enforcement you do unless you have a patrol there constantly. It makes it very difficult to do anything with. So I agree with the conditions that are in here. I think maybe if there is something that Mr. Till can do in terms of that further guidance to deliver around the back, because looking at street map, there's no signage per se, but I guess that would come with the development. From that perspective, then I'm largely in favour.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCrow, I caught you out the corner of my eye first.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, deliveries is a concern, although being that area is in the control of fishers, maybe the problems caused by delivery lorries will devolve onto the employees rather than the general public. But my main concern really is safety. And basically, some people breaking the rules of parking on those zigzags are going to obscure view of the crossing. And that's going to be a road safety issue. That's my main concern, really. Yes, I walk to the Queen Walk. I park in the West Berkshire car park sometimes and walk across to the King Walk. But not everybody will do that. And as I mentioned, when we've got people who are delivering for a living, buying food from the takeaway on behalf of their customers and take it off in taxis or motorbikes or whatever, they're going to be very likely to just park on the zigzags or the double yellow lines outside and cause obstruction to the zebra crossing. That's my real concern.
Okay, thanks, you. Councillor Pemberton, and then I'll go to Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I share the road safety concerns that have been raised by the members, and I'm largely in agreement with a lot of the comments that have already been made. There are a number of schools in the Church Street vicinity of Theale where you've got high school students and primary school students possibly walking on the section of the high street where this proposed development is situated, and visibility, obscuring visibility and the road safety issues that go along with people stopping on double yellow lines and zigzags is well known, and I won't repeat that again here. So I have a huge amount of sympathy around some of the concerns that have been raised. But when I look at this from a planning perspective, whatever angle I come at, it's very difficult not to support this. At the end of the day, we cannot control where people choose to park and stop their vehicle, as has been discussed. If people do behave that is a legal matter, it's a highways matter, it's a police matter or a civil enforcement matter. I don't think it's a reason for us to say no to this. And, you know, I think the comment has already been made as well, alluded to by Councillor Poole, where we're coming at this on the assumption that the vast majority of people going in to collect their takeaway are going to arrive by car. People don't have a right to just park wherever they want, and not everybody's going to be travelling by car. I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, this is likely to be an issue, therefore we should say no to it. Subject to some of the conditions that have been mentioned around deliveries, delivery times, I obviously defer to Mr. Tilley in terms of what those conditions can include. I'd certainly be in favour of having some kind of condition which mandates delivery drivers to access the premises by parking at the rear. If there can be further restrictions on timings of certain types of deliveries, again, I'd be largely supportive of that. I think it's notable as well in terms of consultee responses. I'm looking at the actual agenda pack here, and with the exception of the parish council, who have obviously spoken on this application really eloquently tonight, there's literally no comments and no objections from anybody, including the environmental health team, who presumably would have been consulted as part of the application stage or the pre-application stage around things like noise and odour. And again, when I look at the conditions, there is information in here. There are conditions which will obviously deal with that if and when we get to that stage. And I understand there's been a number of objections and this matter's been called in. But again, in terms of the speakers that have been here tonight, I think this application is notable by the fact that no objector felt the need to come here and address the committee. So to my mind, this sort of tells me that the application's been thought through. I get the impression that the applicant has worked with officers from a very early stage to make sure that this ticks all of the relevant boxes. And from a planning perspective, I would be happy to support this, subject to other comments that the members have made around conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to be clear, when you're talking about objectors, you're talking about the statutory list that we've got.
You are quite correct, Councillor Rodman. My apologies.
I want to make that clear for everybody that's watching in, of course.
Statutory consultees.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take a slightly different view on this. I mean, I share that. We've spoken a lot about the road safety issues. I won't say any more on that, other than that I agree with what previous concerns that previous speakers have said. And it is, this is a difficult decision. But I note that I'm looking at the section here marked planning, headed planning, balance and conclusion. And I'm particularly taken by. I am concerned about the number of takeaway units in this high street, and I can see that problem in my own ward as well, where certain areas of shops have been taken over by what were previously shops are now takeaways, and it does lead to problems. It leads to it might. I'm not sure that it would necessarily be an issue here, but I think it can lead to increases in antisocial behaviour, which hasn't really been mentioned, but that is a fear that I have. But I also know that it says here this is finely balanced in policy terms, and equally an argument could reasonably be made that an additional takeaway could be of minor harm to the vitality of the centre, as it will reduce the diversity of the non-retail offering. And I know Thiel quite well, and I have used, incidentally, the King Walk. I used to use that because I live just outside Thiel, and it is a great, one of a number of takeaways there, and I've used quite a few of those takeaways from time to time. But I do wonder whether there is a need for another one. And my inclination is to oppose this application.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just one observation before we move on to the voting from me, and it's noting that in conversation there about the fact that we have got a West Berkshire car park in the area, and I know from a very recent conversation with the service director that actually the enforcement team do patrol in the areas of car parks, not just the car parks, but the roads as well. So where there are restrictions, I think it would be worth, should this be approved in line with the officer's recommendation tonight, I think it would be worth taking that matter up with highways officers as to how that can be taken forward to give some assurance to those that live and I dare say work in the area. Members, thank you. If there's no further comments, I am looking. Councillor Macro.
Can I just respond to that? I mean, I have been in touch with the enforcement officers about the problems we already have for people parking on double yellow lines. The issue is is my understanding though, that the enforcement of the zigzags will be down to the police rather than the civil enforcement officer. And I'm getting a nod from the highways.
Duly noted. Thank you for that. Okay, members, I'm looking for a proposal. Councillor Poole, I saw your hand out first.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the comments that have been shared this evening and my view, I would like to propose that we accept officer's recommendation to grant approval for the development, including the forgive me the wording, the condition. Thank you very much, Councillor Cotton, regarding deliveries, which will be agreed upon after the meeting.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Till, can I come to you before we go to a seconder, please, for suggested wording?
Thank you, Chairman. I would suggest that such a condition could be applied, requiring that before the hot food takeaway use is commenced, before that unit is taken into use, details are provided for delivery arrangements for outgoing deliveries to demonstrate how those will be received to the rear of the building using the rear access, and for incoming deliveries the same, actually, to demonstrate how they'll be received to the rear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Till. Councillor Poole, does that find your agreement?
It does. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very much,
much
Mr. Till.
Councillor Kander? Thank you very much.
I'll second.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, we have a proposal which is seconded with an additional condition. Can I have votes in favour, please? Thank you very much. Are those against? Thank you. And I don't believe that leaves any room for abstention other than myself. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. You therefore have conditional approval in line with officer's recommendation for your application. Gentlemen, congratulations. Shall I hand back to you to close the meeting, Chair?
Thank you. Before I do close the meeting, I'd like to commend you on your very admirable chairmanship during the item. Thank you. There being no other business, I would like to close the meeting. Thank you very much.